John Scott here with Vic Carucci and Jonathan Acosta. Bills beating the Chiefs 28-21. Let's just start. Simple question. How important and big of a win is this for the Bills?
It is absolutely as critical a win as they could have. Even though they were coming off a big win against Carolina that snapped a two-game losing streak, this is the one that I think makes more of the statement of, okay, this team's ability and status as a contender. And I think the Chiefs were playing outstanding football. Yeah, they got off to a slow start, but for 5 consecutive games, they were playing well, even in a loss, averaging 31 points a game. So this one, I think from a confidence building, and you heard Max Haristen say it, it just shoots it through the roof. I think vital in that regard, and bigger, in my opinion, than any of the previous 4 regular season wins that they had against the Chiefs, because keeps them within striking distance of New England. That's vital, right, in the AFC East. And also, for any potential tiebreaker, if these Chiefs should be part of that or whatever at the end of the season, obviously very important.
And you also had Indianapolis lose, in terms of like the race for the #1 overall seed in the AFC. Let's just be blunt, this is the Bills' best win of the season. Considering the opponent, in terms of the complementary football, how they played on both sides of the ball, the offense over 400 total yards, the defense, I think considering how this Chiefs offense had been playing the previous month coming into this game, a great performance. Hats off to Sean McDermott and Bobby Babich. Their best win of the season. I think it sets the tone for them to really sort of drive off this confidence going forward.
Yeah, it was Spencer Brown after the game said, hey, we've heard a lot of critics out there saying, hey, this and that about us. Well, we come out of the bye week, we handle business at Carolina, we handle business here against the Chiefs. I think maybe the dialogue's going to go a little different. Now, you look down the list of things that we've discussed that are issues for this football team. They kind of checked off every single one. Let's start defensively, because that's where I think that was the most impressive performance. 52.6% of the time Patrick Mahomes was pressured. That according to Next Gen Stats. They were relentless, not just getting to him, but containing him. He only had 5 rushing yards, and when we discussed going into the game, he's at a career pace for rushing yards in games. He couldn't do anything with his legs or his arm.
He did not look like the Patrick Mahomes who had been playing in the previous 5 games where I thought he was playing his best football,
MVP-type football.
Which is saying a lot. But for him to come out of this game with a 44.1 completion percentage, that's a career low for him. That says a lot. And what does it say? It says the Bills were making him uncomfortable in every possible way. The pass rush was a big part of it, but the coverage also a huge part of it, and he never seemed, really to understand what he was looking at, and this is one of the smarter, one of the deeper thinking quarterbacks this game has, and usually he can work his way around things if he's not comfortable with what he sees. Almost never able to do that. Yes, he had some big 3rd down completions.
And fourth.
And fourth where the Bills defense looked bad. But overall, you have to say, Jonathan, this defense did its job, the #1 job, make that guy uncomfortable.
I think back to 2 things. A.J. Epinesa was asked in the locker room, does this kind of show that regardless of how good a quarterback is, they're all affected by pressure? And he said, I would like to think so. And I think that rang true in this game. The Bills credited with 15 QB hits in this game. Joey Bosa and Greg Rousseau combined for 9 of them. They played like with their hair on fire. The one sour note in this game, and maybe we'll get to it later on, was as it really seemed like the 2 of them, along with Michael Hoyt, were really starting to take over this game. You see Michael Hoyt go down with what was later confirmed as a torn Achilles, right? So just more depletion along the defensive line. But going back to the positive note of just how overall they played, this was as good of a pass rushing, I think, performance that we've seen out of the Bills all season long. Then the other thing I think back to was Spencer Brown, right? We're usually asking him offensive questions, and he's talking about the offense. The first name out of his mouth when he was talking in the post-game locker room was Cole Bishop, which I think says a lot in terms of the way Cole Bishop played in this game. I think had 7 tackles, a bunch of pass deflections. I think the secondary overall was really impressive too. And, Christian Benford gets a lot of the credit in terms of the secondary as maybe the name that stands out the most. But it was guys like Cam Lewis making plays, Cole Bishop, Max Haristen, an interception in just his 2nd game, right? So I think you saw on this Bills defense a lot of different guys step up and make an impact in this game as opposed to just being sort of a one-man show.
And it was notable that Sean McDermott made a point of saying attitude was very important. And when I followed up and asked him what he meant by that, he said it's a nastiness that he saw in this defense, and that is vital, that finesse doesn't work for effectiveness for a defense, and that it was nasty. So playing with that attitude, and I think it showed up with Cole Bishop, the kinds of hits that he had, the kind of hits that other players had. They went out here with a purpose in mind, and that purpose was to let the Chiefs know, to let the rest of the NFL know that they are back.
Yeah, the defensive line, Bosa was just relentless in there. You even saw A.J. Epinesa get some shots in there on Mahomes. They were just constantly in his face. But Cole Bishop deserves a little more of our time because we've spent time on the other side of the coin with Bishop, and certainly concerns at the safety position. Taylor Rapp now out for the year, so that's now the Jordan Poyer, Jordan Hancock kind of thing. And Bishop's back there. We've seen moments, the interception over here earlier in the season where he kind of flew around and came out of nowhere to get it. But my God, did you see that athleticism in multiple ways? And to your point, it was so profound to me. End of the first half, that critical goal line stand that this Bills defense had, the key play was Cole Bishop popping Travis Kelce. So much so that not just Kelce, but also Cole Bishop had to get to the locker room a little early to get examined by their training staff. You saw both sides of it, and you're starting to see maybe it just takes a little bit longer for a guy like Cole Bishop to develop and find his way here in this defense.
Yeah, and you're right, because all of us, I mean, I'll raise my hand, starting in the preseason, we're questioning, wondering, when is it going to start to come together with this guy? And you just saw those reason for doubt in terms of the way he was playing at a position where this team needed as much help as it could get, and it seemed like that was the vulnerability. Going into this game, the number one worry, how are they going to hold up on the back end against all these receivers that the Chiefs have, all these pass catchers with great speed? And not only did they hold up, I mean, they did more than that. They really, in so many ways, you could say kind of dominated, because when you got Patrick Mahomes getting hit as much as he did, and a lot of that had to do with him holding the ball because that coverage did its job.
I think it's interesting to look at sort of the two sides of the coin in terms of like the veterans on the Bills defense, right? Where you have a Jordan Phillips, you have a Jordan Poyer, where they're here more not because of their athletic ability per se, but their knowledge of the defense and their veteran experience and their savviness. And on the flip side, you have all this youth now that seems to have incorporated with this Bills defense this year. Obviously, Cole Bishop, it's his second year, but first year starting. You have Jordan Hancock starting to play a lot more. Max Haristen, the speed and athleticism that he brings to the secondary. So we talked, a few weeks ago, actually, about how this Bills defense was going to start looking a little bit different after the bye in terms of the suspensions and the players coming back, right? Well, you get not just those young pieces starting to play a lot better, but you also had the return of Matt Milano and Terrell Bernard at linebacker, your two starting linebackers that, as much as you've wanted to see them play together, you just haven't been able to see that come to fruition all that often. So I think certainly positive vibes for this Bills defense in terms of the progression that you're seeing from some of the young guys and how that sort of fits in with the veteran pieces that you have elsewhere on the defense.
The Max Harrison interception certainly is going to be the highlight that we all see, but there was a play earlier in the game where Xavier Worthy just ran a straight go. And I don't know how many players in the National Football League can literally go stride for stride with Xavier Worthy on a straight go route. And Max Harrison might have actually been a step ahead of him and was in phenomenal coverage here. We've seen two games, Vic. Is it now time, as it continues to be a rotation through this game, but is it now time to add more to Max Harrison's plate and maybe make him this team's starting corner?
It feels like we're getting there. If they're not completely there, they're darn close, because you can see, again, his confidence building, but also knowing where he's supposed to be on the field, that the athleticism, speed, we knew he had all of that. The question is above the shoulder pads, and I thought this was a game, and think about it, this is Andy Reid's offense. This is Patrick Mahomes. I mean, if there's any team that challenges you mentally, offensively, it challenges the defense mentally, this is the one, and the adjustments that have to be made. It looked to me, now again, just cursory glance from above, from the press box, that he was always where he needed to be, or at least most of the time. You mentioned stride for stride with Xavier Worthy, huge, but all in all, yes, he's he's got to be close to where Sean McDermott, this coaching staff, is going to have that confidence to say, okay, it's time to put him in there as a starter. I don't know if you'd still do the rotation thing along the way. I'm sure you still have Tre'Davious White, you still have experienced people that you could work in there. But I think once this guy is established, I think they just would let him go.
I think it's one of those things where it's time on task, and the more time on task that he gets, the more ready he's going to be for it, right? You remember back to even Bobby Babich talking about calling defensive plays for the first time, saying you're never ready to do it until you do it, right? And then you feel like you're ready. You can sort of diagnose how you've done, right? I think that's going to be the case with Max Haristen. When is he going to be ready to start? Whenever they throw him in there, right? And it feels like he's sort of progressing towards that. And then, I mean, you think about they're playing Miami next week. Throw him out there and against Jalen Waddle, right? I know Tyreek Hill in that offense, but they still have plenty of speed in Devon Achane and Jalen Waddle, so certainly his speed a facet, not just against Miami, but again, going forward against some of the other offense they might see later on in the regular season or in the postseason as well.
You mentioned Michael Hoyt out for the rest of the season, presumably with a torn Achilles, according to Sean McDermott. That's someone they're going to have to overcome. We don't know a timeline on Taron Johnson, who didn't play in this game, so this defense, oh, by the way, with the trade deadline, 4 o'clock on Tuesday, continues to deal with injuries. We got to talk offense. Josh Allen, a franchise best, a career best, 88.5% completion percentage. He wasn't driving the ball down the field a ton, especially early, but the passing game, it was awoken. Is that the right word? You're the wordsmith. Or is it awake? I don't know, but you called it broken, and it looked fixed or closer to fixed against Kansas City.
And I did call it broken, and it looked, calling it fixed I think would be an understatement, and just in terms of the function or functionality, it looked dysfunctional, let's face it, except for that fourth quarter in Baltimore and every game up until this one where you had more questions about every facet of that passing game, including Josh Allen. Well, in this game, you saw him obviously regain that form that he had, that I think control, command, confidence. He said there were a couple of plays, that he'd want back. I understand that, but man, when you're hitting 88.5% of your passes, and granted, these weren't a lot of longer throws. The tight end game was big. His connections with Dalton Kincaid, obviously huge, but just in general, it felt like he was a more comfortable guy. And then to do that, along with James Cook having a 100-yard game, the running game that had defined this offense, this was a game, I think, Jonathan, where it felt like both elements, passing and running, fully complemented each other.
And we've been waiting for sort of a full game performance from this offense, right? We've seen it in sort of pieces, right? You think of the fourth quarter in Baltimore, right? They've had the blowout wins against the Jets in Carolina where they haven't had to keep the pedal on the gas for the full 60 minutes, right? This was their best sort of complementary football where you think about Josh Allen taking care of the football, 3 incompletions, 3 total touchdowns, right? Getting that balance in terms of the run game and the pass game. I will say, to me, this performance, especially in the pass game, was more about Josh Allen than the scheming or the receivers. And it's hard for me still to get out of my head what we've seen out of the passing attack against Carolina in the first half, against Atlanta, or against New England. So I won't say, and I feel like I'm generally an optimist on this, but I won't say that just off this performance, this passing attack is fixed, right? Because there's certainly a world out there where we look back in 2 or 3 weeks and say, especially if there's no move done at the trade deadline, so you're going with the horses that you have, where we look back in 2 or 3 weeks and say, they played well against Kansas City, but it ended up being a blip on the radar as opposed to the other performances that we've seen out of this passing attack. So I want to see this carry over, right? Because you know what you have in Dalton Kincaid. You know what you have in Khalil Shakir. But you didn't get a big game out of Keon Coleman in this one. You got one big catch out of Elijah Moore. It was a nice big play. What are you seeing out of Curtis Samuel? Right. You got a big player, Dawson Knox. So this was, again, where you had a lot of different pieces can sort of contribute, which was good to see. You know what you have in Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid, but I still feel like you need 1 or 2 more consistently productive guys in this passing attack for me to feel comfortable with it.
It still speaks to, you're absolutely right, it still speaks to what's lacking in the way of the talent there. But I think schematically, Joe Brady and Allen, let's throw that into the mix, the play calling, and Josh mentioned that afterward. And I know he always wants to give Joe a pat on the back, but it was deserved. I thought the way Joe Brady called this game, guys, was his best. clearly, I think, of the season, or certainly, again, going back to fourth quarter against Baltimore. But honestly, I think you're right about that from the talent standpoint. But I will say, Trent McDuffie and others in that secondary. This was a good secondary that they had that success in, good cover linebackers. So it wasn't, I mean, if this were against a lesser defensive opponent on the back end, I'd probably say, yeah, let's wait and see. But I am a little more buoyed by what I saw.
I do agree. It was not a wide receiver, I'm going to change my opinion type of performance here. I think it was just an overall passing game, and definitely Josh Allen looked like MVP Josh Allen.
Yes.
Even without the Superman throws, the Superman runs, he just was in complete command and control of everything that was happening. I'll end on this. The trade deadline, as I said, is 4 o'clock at Tuesday afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Bills have the least amount of cap space of any team in the National Football League, so any grandeur of some massive move of an A.J. Brown or anything like that, they don't have the money. It ain't going to happen here. Did this performance change your opinion on what or if they need to do anything on Tuesday?
Well, I think the Michael Hoyt injury, season ending as it is, would force their hand for sure to get more help at defensive tackle. And you already have Ed Oliver missing most of the season. You still have Daquan Jones hurt. So tackle is a wide open sore spot for this football team that has to be addressed in one form or another. I can see Harrison Phillips, for instance, coming back to Buffalo from the Jets. That's just one possibility when you look at his salary and you look at that lack of room that you talk about. And I know people want something far more dramatic. They want them to make that move that would ensure a Super Bowl run. It's not there to be made, not because there might be people out there or that the Bills would be unwilling to give up those picks. But when you make a trade, you get that contract, and they're not going to get a bargain on a marquee player, number one. Number two, reworking deals, kicking cans down the road with multiple players. I just think, for Brandon Beane's sake, he likes Trader Bean, he likes to do all that, but he is a smart GM, and he is not going to try to do something that, for the sake of making a move that would pacify or help make fans feel better about this football team, and then put this team in a big hole.
It feels like there's two positions realistically that would be addressed at the trade deadline, right? Defensive tackle, especially in the wake of, you mentioned Oliver, Hoyt, Daquan Jones, TJ Sanders is still on IR, right? A second-round pick, right? It's incredible the amount of injuries that they've had at that position. Or wide receiver. To your point, it doesn't feel like with the amount of cap space they have that they can make impactful moves at both. So it's kind of where you have to sort of pick your poison, right? Like, which one are you going to address? Which one are you going to ignore? Considering on offense that you have Josh Allen and you have James Cook playing the way he's playing, I think coming into this game, I would have said maybe you address wide receiver, but in the wake, especially of the Hoyt injury, I think you have to go defensive tackle, especially because you're maybe boosted in the way you're thinking. You see this defense perform when Michael Hoyt was on the field. It's like, hey, if we can just keep getting that of Rousseau and Bosa and just add another piece there, help sort of stop the bleeding a little bit on that defensive line until we can get some pieces back. Maybe you get Ed Oliver back for a playoff run. You eventually have Daquan Jones and TJ Sanders back in the mix. That adding a defensive tackle piece, while maybe not the sexiest move, is maybe the healthiest move for this team to make in terms of their long-term future this season.
Sure.
I think if they love versatility, that was Hoyt's thing. He also made some great plays off the edge as well, and depends on maybe what they think of Javon Solomon. He would be the guy sliding in as that fourth defensive end, and maybe at the defensive tackle position, we don't know the medicals, but if Daquan Jones and TJ Sanders are actually not that far behind, maybe it takes a little bit of the pressure off of addressing defensive tackle. I think something's going to happen. I just am more on the minor level for the variety of reasons that we've already discussed here. Again, trade deadline Tuesday at 4 o'clock. With Jonathan Acosta and Vic Carucci, I'm John Scott for Channel 2 Sports.